welcome to Daily Debrief. I'm Pragya. Malaysia has picked long-time opposition leader Anwar Ibrahim and his coalition to govern the country for the next 5 years. After Saturday's unclear election results, parties were jostling for power amid concerns of a rightward tilt in its politics. In our second story, a Netherlands court on Wednesday declared an attack by Dutch forces that killed 20 civilians in 2007 in Afghanistan as illegal. And we have an update from the FIFA World Cup in Qatar, which has delivered some surprises in the first round. The coalition of opposition leader Anwar Ibrahim won the most seats in Malaysia's election on Saturday, but the party to gain the most seats is part of the conservative Perikatan Nasional. At the heart of the result is voters ending a long-standing pattern of one coalition replacing another in each election. Now that he's Prime Minister, does Anwar Ibrahim's Pact for Hope or Pakatan Harapan have its work cut out to create more inclusive politics and better manage the economy? Anish, who has been tracking this election, will join us. Anish, thanks for joining us. We discussed this election yesterday on our show as well, but now Anwar Ibrahim is the Prime Minister. Can you just talk about what is the relevance of this?
Well, definitely, as we spoke about this before, this sort of his ascendancy to the prime ministership obviously comes in his career is a milestone, considering the fact that he's been trying that for nearly 3 decades now. But for Malaysia, it also shows that the old kind of politics, even when you have the same faces who were always there for the past 3 decades, is not going to be relevant anymore in Malaysian politics, in that it is not going to be the only thing that you can bank upon for votes. And that is very clear with the loss of Mahathir, or the kind of performance that Barisan Nasional, the one coalition that led Malaysia for 6 decades, has performed in this election. On top of that, there is going to be a likely alliance, a second sort of progressive alliance coming to power in Malaysia after the second Mahathir coming in alliance with Anwar Ibrahim that happened in 2018. In this, we are more likely to see a more reformist kind of government, but at the same time, we are not sure how policy-wise on other matters it will differ from the past. We need to remember that all said and done, despite the diversity in its leadership, Barisan Nasional is an ideologically conservative coalition, and so there will be some amount of balancing act being done with the reformist kind of promises that Anwar Ibrahim gave during the election campaign, and the kind of politics that Barisan Nasional is known for. On the other hand, we are more likely to have a more right-wing, very pronounced ethno-nationalist, pro-Malayan ethno-nationalist opposition, and that is something that will be interesting in the case of Malaysian politics, because obviously this sort of pronounced Malayan nationalism was not, although it was definitely there in some level. There were undertones of it in the previous governments, but nothing was so outwardly obvious for so many years because of its multicultural, ethnic diversity. So we're definitely set up for a different kind of political formations, political coalitions in the coming months.
Right, Anish. Also, that's why there have been calls actually for the parties and the coalitions to get together and govern together, and those kind of calls have come. But what are the challenges that we can foresee right now for the government coming in?
Yeah, for the upcoming government, there will obviously be the challenge of trying to balance between certain Malayan nationalist tendency that is quite prevalent in Malaysia, which was something that also gave us such a split results in the country in this general election. So the next government will have to definitely balance that with aspirations of ethnic minorities, including the Indian and Chinese communities, and also the East Malaysian groups. Now, what is interesting here is that the Sarawak region will not there won't be a majority coming from the Sarawak province in East Malaysia, which where you had the sort of regionalist party coalition taking most of the seats. Obviously, Pakatan Harapan did win a couple of seats, about 7 in the province. But the ethnic divisions of that, we need to wait and see if there will be any level of concessions being made by the upcoming government to balance that as well. So there will be definitely attempts to balance this sort of diverse ethnic and regional interest that obviously has always been a challenge for any Malaysian government. But in this case, considering the fact that there is a very clearly reformist tendency with Anwar Ibrahim, how he is going to challenge how he is going to balance these aspirations is going to be definitely something that we need to watch out for. There are also factors of the supposed mismanagement of the previous government during the COVID-19 pandemic. So obviously, Anwar Ibrahim also has to grapple with a whole host of economic and public health issues, and also issues of migrant workers and asylum seekers. That has also been a major issue in the last few years. So these are also factors that will definitely come in, and how that is going to be treated, how these issues will be treated with the Barisan National coalition partner will be something that will be even more challenging for the Anwar Ibrahim government.
Right, Anish. Thanks for joining us. A Netherlands court on Wednesday declared an attack on Chora village in southern Afghanistan in June 2007 as illegal. 15 years ago, Dutch forces participated in a late-night raid in Chora in which 20 civilians were killed. The District Court of The Hague ruled that the Netherlands must compensate the victims. Dutch forces were part of a coalition led by the United States and its allies, which forcibly occupied Afghanistan. The ruling deals with just one of the extensive crimes committed in Afghanistan over 2 decades of occupation. Abdul from People's Dispatch is here with more. So Abdul, 15 years have passed since the incident in 2007. What is the relevance of this ruling today?
Well, this is a significant ruling in the sense that most of the countries which participated in the invasion in Afghanistan, US and its allies, have not even acknowledged their war crimes they committed in Afghanistan for all these years. Despite the fact that there are various proofs available, evidence is available in the public domain, in various reports compiled by the different human rights organizations. And so in that context, one of the countries which was part of that coalition of forces which were there in Afghanistan, agreeing in one incident at least that there was illegality involved. The Dutch forces, when they attacked the Afghan village, they did not even bothered to basically verify their information about presence of Taliban forces in the village, and they just used massive force to bomb the village, killing at least 20 civilians. Though the number is conservative because even the AP report, if you see, talks about a minimum of 50 to 80 civilians being killed in the joint operation which was carried for 3 days at that time. But still, this is a right development which should be replicated more by different other countries. So it sets a good precedent in that sense.
Right, Abdul. So, you talked about impact. Now, 20 years of the occupation, but the impact of the occupation is not over for Afghanistan. Can you talk about that?
Of course, the impact will not be over so soon. The current Taliban government is not being recognized, and the common Afghans are basically facing lots of trouble in terms of economic troubles, attacks by different quote-unquote terrorist groups, and different other problems they are facing, political oppression of women, and so on and so forth. So these are multiple implications which occupation created in last 2 decades and more than that, which basically will take longer time to kind of heal all those impacts which Afghans are facing. The problem is there a right approach to address those issues? For example, when we talk about the war crimes committed by the different international forces in Afghanistan, there is simply no concern of even acknowledging if it was a mistake committed by their armed forces and taking proper action against those who were responsible for the war crimes, killing of civilians, destruction of civilian houses, destruction of civilian infrastructure in a poor country, knowing very well that this will be difficult for them to kind of rebuild or kind of recreate. The life lost will not be compensated in any way. Despite those facts known, the armed forces in Afghanistan committed crimes against people, and there is not even acknowledgement of those crimes by US and its allies. So first thing should be that once you acknowledge the crimes committed by your forces, then you take action against it. For example, while during the withdrawal of the US forces, civilians were killed in Kabul.
Right.
US agreed, after a lot of pressure, US agreed that okay, their forces were responsible for the killing of the civilians, but it says that there will be no action taken. So that approach, until there is a right approach to address the problems created by the occupation, apart from economic and other problems, there cannot be a kind of recovery from the impacts created by the occupation. So in that context, when we talk about the impact of occupation, we should start with how those who are responsible for the occupation and the destruction of Afghanistan, how they are responding to the problems they have created.
Right, Abdul. Thanks a lot for joining us. Japan beat Germany and Saudi Arabia beat Argentina at the FIFA World Cup in Qatar. These upsets are a leg up for the Asian teams, but will the trend sustain? And the technology used in these games is impacting every match. Do semi-automated offside technology mean that the hand of God will never happen again? Siddhant Ane is in Qatar for the games, and we spoke to him just a short while ago. Siddhant, thanks for joining us. Siddhant, so the World Cup so far, some surprise or some upset, depending on how you look at it. Do you think this trend is going to sustain?
As a neutral fan or a neutral journalist, in this case, Pragya, I have to say that the hope is yes. I mean, how much it will happen, I don't know. We'll see, because as you get deeper into a long tournament, a tournament that lasts a month, it becomes harder and harder for smaller teams to maintain, because there are lots of other factors that come in: injuries, suspensions because of yellow and red cards, and those kind of things. And obviously, the smaller teams have less bench strength to replace their quality players. Saudi, for example, in the game against Argentina, picked up 6 yellow cards, plus at least 2 injuries to 2 critical players. So it'll make things harder for them in the next 2 games, which doesn't, of course, take away from anything, because for Saudi fans and for the Saudi national team, winning that game against Lionel Messi in Argentina is the biggest thing that has happened in the history of sport in that country.
Right.
So that is definitely an upset. But the other thing also that you brought up that is quite interesting is the perspective on what is an upset and what is a surprise result, on an unexpected result in that sense. Sure, most people would have expected Germany to get a more positive result, at least a draw, if not a win against Japan. But the fact is that Japan have, over the past 30, 40 years, built up a football structure that gives access to the sport to anyone that wants to play in that country, pretty much. So from a coaching perspective, a refereeing perspective, from a organized competitive perspective, they have actually empowered those who want to play the sport, whether they are men or women. Of course, we have to remember also that the women's national team in Japan has gone and won a senior World Cup. So they are more again, an example of a more successful women's team in that context than the men. So it's also a structure that is inclusive and that allows the sport to actually, like we keep saying, it is a mass sport. It's the most popular sport in the world, and therefore the only way you can get good at it is from the ground up. Very different
Right.
from, for example, what happens in Qatar. So as neutrals or as people backing the underdog, we can only hope for more upsets as the tournament gets on. It's only the opening round of matches. So it'll get, hopefully it'll remain as interesting and as unpredictable as it has been so far.
Right, Siddhant. Siddhant, the other thing that's probably going to attract a lot of attention even in the coming days is the technology, the VAR, the offside technology, the semi-automated technology. For a lot of people who watch the games only when the World Cup is on, can you just sort of talk about what kind of impact that's having?
Yeah, first up, Pragya, the thing with football is that you celebrate when a goal is scored, right?
Right.
So it takes away from the spontaneity and that joy that comes from your the team that you're supporting finding the back of the net, because you have to wait now to see whether it's a goal or not a goal. So that's the most immediate impact. So it detracts from the joy of the sport if you're an invested fan. There are, of course,
Right.
those who are watching who, like you said, come in just when the World Cup happens, and for them, it does other things. It makes it more fair. Like, for example, in the Saudi Argentina game, I don't think the result would have been the same without this new offside technology, right? Because both Messi and Lautaro Martinez's goals, the assistant referees on the sidelines didn't catch those offsides because
Right.
the margin was that small. For one, I think it was a shoulder. For another, it was just like a foot or something like that. So almost impossible to catch just with the human eye. I don't want to get into the debate on VAR because I think now that is quite far gone and VAR is here to stay. In India, for example, at the recently concluded Under 17 Women's World Cup, VAR was used for the first time. So I think as camera technologies get cheaper, those can be localized and implemented at a fairly ground level. So I think VAR is one side, but the offside technology is, at least at the moment, extremely expensive. It requires a lot of computing to come up with that, and it's as new to the players who are playing the World Cup as it is to anyone else because it's the first time it's ever being used. So there are many positives to it. Of course, it reduces, for example, the possibility of fixing because it's
Right.
everyone can see what's going on. But at the same time, when new technology comes in, I think a key question that we address all the time and that should be addressed is accessibility and how widely it can be applied. And if technology is so expensive that there literally is no chance of it being applied at the grassroots level, then you end up creating a system. It's another example of, I guess, World Cup exceptionalism. That
Sure.
everyone else is playing one kind of football, and then there's the World Cup. So whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I'm not saying, but at least it's a question worth considering. And I'm sure FIFA's technical study group and other people involved in the conversations, including players, as the tournament goes on, will weigh in on the subject, and we'll see how it goes.
Right, Siddhant. Great. I'm sure we'll be catching up with you again on the World Cup. Thanks for joining us. And that's all we have for today. Thank you for watching Daily Debrief. Do come back to us tomorrow. You can find more such stories on our website, peoplesdispatch.org, and look out for our regular updates on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.